Hello everyone, welcome to this edition of On Deck with Mercury. I'm Vienna Town Manager Mercury Payton. Our topic tonight has to do with the next phase of our Code Create process. It's our town's first zoning code update in about 60 years. And so with us tonight is our very own Director of Planning and Zoning, David Levy. Hi David, how are you?
Hi, good evening.
Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with us tonight and to talk about Code Create.
Happy to do it.
So this is something that's special to the town, and the zoning code has gotten a lot of attention in the community, and the news media has followed it for the last several years. Of course, the code sets basic rules about how land is used in the town of Vienna. So maybe explain a little bit about how the code works for us.
Sure, I'm happy to do so. Good evening again. It's a good opportunity. So, what is zoning? Zoning regulates how people, businesses can use land. Why can't your neighbor take a house, tear it down, and build a factory next to you? Why can't that neighbor say, oh, instead I'm going to build a 20-story apartment building? The reason is because zoning regulates what people can do with the land. So zoning regulations are developed in the best world, which we think that's what's happening in Vienna, with community input ultimately decided by the elected officials to reflect the values of the community. And so that's the regulation of how land is used to reflect those values.
Sure, and it makes sense when you think about zoning codes and houses near each other, and then schools integrated, and then commerce together. So it does make sense when you say it that way, because otherwise you'd have all kinds of uses next to each other, and it just seems that life flows better when you have this residential community over here, and then you have a business zone over here. So I think that most people, when they really pause and think about it, probably would appreciate the fact that you have a zoning code of regulations.
Yeah, and as we know, all people are different, and so there are plenty of people who like to live in areas where it's residential, and there are others who like to live in a mixed-use environment where they can walk to retail, and so each community has to work out what they want their mix to be.
Right.
And so that's what this process is working out. It also should follow from the vision from the comprehensive plan. And so the plan sets the big framework, and the zoning implements that. And so you're right, Mr. Town Manager, the community here in Vienna very much wants to have its residential areas that are protected, and that's the majority of the town. But then there are other areas where there's more desire to have some mixing.
Sure, absolutely. Well, you've taught me well. That's why. So the latest proposed changes in the town zoning code comes out on the heels of the first adopted change this past June, which accommodates modern lifestyles which are quite different from those in the past. That change had to do with porch projections, giving Vienna residents greater flexibility in creating livable spaces outdoors. But that was only the first step in the broader effort to modernize the town zoning code, which we refer to as Code Create. So what's the status of that right now?
Sure, well, it's very active right now. It's an ongoing process, multi-year. The town council authorized bringing in an outside expert to bring some fresh eyes to the process, that's ZoneCo, with their point person, Sean Suter. They have worked with staff, and staff has worked with the community to develop concepts. The staff has held many conference sessions with the town council, with the planning commission in 2021 and then 2022, and as recently as last night, to go through drafts, get feedback, make changes. So the next step is to make a series of revisions based on the discussions with the council and the planning commission, bring them back to really dive in again, and then bring it all back to the public again.
Right. And that's a very methodical approach. If you thinking about it, it's not something that should take 3 to 6 months. I mean, it's something that should have a lot of thought, and we have 16,000, almost 17,000 residents here, so you have a lot of people that will be impacted here who pay their taxes and expect the zoning code to reflect, generally speaking, their wishes. I mean, you're going to have different opinions across the board, but you're right, it's a multi-year process, and we do bring in outside experts because while your staff is very robust, I mean, these experts have done this across the country.
Correct.
So they do bring a perspective, but we still want to keep our own Vienna pride about what we are here because we're very, very unique. So I want to say thank you to you and your staff because I know that this has been a lot of heavy lifting and there have been some community integrated aspects of getting in front of the public. Maybe 18, 24 months ago, I remember out on the town green, there were these little mock zones that were out there where people could come and look at what these zones could look like. And then at the community center, we've had similar setups where people could come in. I think there were even like little Lego pieces or whatever where people could see what zoning setbacks in the code could look like. So that was community input back then. Talk a little bit about the community input going forward now that we're going to kind of restart as we kind of these 18 months or so we've been doing a lot of now work inside the building, so to speak, inside Town Hall, now going back out to the community. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Right. Well, informing and engaging the community has been a high priority from the town council from the beginning. They're very clear about that from you. And, for people who do the kind of work that we do, we care about that a lot. Sure. So that's, so going forward, we will be doing a lot over the next few months of letting people know exactly where it is, where they can find the information. We're getting things out on the listserv. Everybody can sign up for the listserv on the Code Create website. There's a key moment that's coming up that everybody should be aware of. There will be formal public hearings. So in the events that we have held in the past, they're talking to staff frequently, telling us what their input is, and we do our very best to incorporate that in. But at these moments coming up, they're going to have a chance to say it directly to the council and to the planning commission. And it'll be based on, okay, here's a draft, let's take a look. Our job as staff will be to help the public understand what's in the draft so they can give informed testimony to the council. Doesn't matter whether it agrees, staff agree with it, what's in it or doesn't. What matters is folks are informed and they can give testimony that can help the council make the best decision for the community. So we're going to be doing a lot of engagement and outreach over the next few months. It's going to ramp up for the public hearings, which look to be in the spring.
Sure. And I think you hit on some really important points here because I think the public should know that we have staff here working on this, and as all people, have ideas and thoughts. Certainly, staff have opinions and thoughts about what it should be or shouldn't. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to hear from the public. We want to hear from the residents, and this is something where there's not really necessarily a wrong answer. There's answer A, B, or C, which may look different depending on what those variables might be, and we want this to be something where we have many, many, many people come out.
Yes.
We want to hear from hundreds, even thousands of people. I like to have it where it's something where there's so many people that Town Hall can't hold the people, and we have to move it to another location because in that environment, that's when we're hearing from a cross section of the community, not just maybe 10 or 15 people who come out and then council hears from them and then kind of take cues from them, whatever that might be. And then we're moving on a zoning code that's going to affect the residents, 16,000 for another 50 years or so. So we want to hear from a groundswell. We want to hear a cross-section, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people giving input at a public hearing. Of course, peacefully, even though you may have different ideas. One group may come in and have one idea, another group has come in with another idea. But we want to get all of the input from the residents. I think that is where it all works together. We have staff, the council, the residents. We're all one team, and we're getting all this input. And then the council has a tough decision to make,
Right.
to say, okay, well, we've heard from everyone,
Right.
and then they've got to make a decision.
Right. So, some of the irony in processes such as these is that sometimes when the draft approximates closely enough what the community is looking for, sometimes you don't get a lot of turnout.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
So you never know what you're going to get.
Right.
What we can do is work with our public information officer, with the council, with you, to get the word out, do the best we can and educating. And I agree. I always tell folks, hey, it's okay to come out and say, I like this.
Right.
It's
right. Right. Too often,
I disagree with this, but I also like this.
Right.
And to reinforce something that they really want to stay.
Sure. Right. Right. Because too often people come out and I'm against this thing.
Right.
This is truly something where it's almost like a blank piece of paper almost, and you kind of express, well, I like a little bit more of this, a little less of that, and then we just kind of get that input and gather it. It should be a really great exercise.
Yeah. One thing that I think people should know is that in the residential areas of the town, there's not much proposal for change.
Right, right.
And I think I would hope people understand that. Sort of the single-family detached areas of the town, we haven't heard from the public, we haven't heard from the planning commission or the town council that there's a desire to do any kind of revolution there.
Right.
So I think when people look, they're going to see maybe some restructuring at how the code is presented, but the standards are mostly just going to be the same.
Right.
We will call out areas that are proposed to be different, but there are not going to be that many of them.
Right.
Most of the discussions have to do with the commercial areas and mixed use areas.
Right.
So that's just sort of...
Sure. That's an excellent point because, the code hasn't been updated in 50 years, and so we have to update definitions.
Yes.
We have to make it user-friendly so people can look at it and understand in today's terms what they can and can't do. I think also one aspect that's going to be important in this update here is the fact that I think one of your predecessors, not your predecessor, but your predecessors, like going back, I think 4 directors. The one that I inherited when I got here in 2011, I think he over time, over 10 or 15 years, he had, aside from the code, he had different rulings that he would make to the side here. So he'd have a side little tally and saying, okay, this is my interpretation of this. Right. And so what we want to do is we want to get away from that and get everything in the book so residents know within the bounds of the code what the game is that they're playing. Instead of they see the code and then they come in and then there's an interpretation off to the side that over the years have been.
It's a really important point, and thank you for raising that. We deal with some things. For example, if somebody owns 2 lots next to each other and they want to adjust the lot line that's between them, there's no real specific guidance within our code that says what the process should be. Now, there is state law, and so we follow the state law, but if a person wants to do that and they come in and they look for it in our code, it's nebulous. Like I said, we're scrupulous about making sure we do it according to state law, but what we've done working with the council and planning commission is let's lay out the steps. Everybody can understand how it works. There's no misunderstanding. Are we going to get it 100% right? Probably not. But we'll try to get as much clear language, as user-friendly as possible, so when people are trying to do something related to land, they can see what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I think once we get to that wonderful moment where the town council approves this, we know even then in real time, it might need some tweaking and updating along the way because we're finite people, we're imperfect, and so even on our best day, we're going to still have some things that probably need to be, even tweaked a little bit. So maybe talk a little bit about how we approach. Okay, it's approved at some point in 2023, and in 2024, you as staff, you notice something. Maybe you should do, or council members may say, or a resident may pick up the phone and call you and say, I don't understand this. And you're like, oh, you know what? It could be more clear in the code. What's the process after it's approved?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So here's a staff dream. So we will not be able to solve all the issues in this because some of them are really policy matters that maybe need the council to go back and update the comprehensive plan. What's our vision for this area of the town? And you can't solve that from zoning. You have to solve that by convening the community and discussing it through. So at the end of this, let's, it's going to be adopted in 2023, So it should be, here's the new zoning code, and here's our to-do list. So here's what we've done. Here are the things that are outstanding that we want to work on. And that can be kind of March, we'll have a new council sometime at the end of 2023, early 24, who will set new priorities. And we'll look at what's come out of that process. And we'll get direction as to what our priorities will be. At the same time, there will be people who see things like you say, oh, wait a minute, I wanted to do this thing. You laid out a process here, it's a little nebulous, it's not quite clear, we need to clarify that. Say, okay, all right, so we bring it to you, bring it to the planning commission, bring it to the council and say, you know what, that resident had a point, that developer had a point. We recommend, let's do this. Right. And we get direction, let's do an update, hold a public hearing and do it. So a healthy zoning code doesn't wait for 50 years.
But I was just making him right.
It's a work in progress that never ends.
Right. Excellent. So what's the timeline for the final version of the plan?
Yeah. So absolutely, 2023. The goal is to get it finished. Early fall at latest for 2023. If we can bring back, so we get all the direction we're going to get from the council before their summer break, so we have time during the summer break to put all that direction into the updated version, bring it back to them after the summer break, so they can get a last look and say, hey, you got it perfect, staff, or staff, you need to do a few more things, and then have them take it home. So we're hoping September they can take it home.
Good, excellent. Well, we do have a few residents here with us. Before we turn to them, is there anything that has been left unsaid? Anything that you want residents out there to think about with regard to Code Create?
Yes, thank you. This stuff's complicated, and it's a lot of content. And it's easy to feel intimidated by it. What I want residents, property owners, businesses to understand is, please don't feel like you have to understand everything perfectly to come in and ask a question, come in and make a comment to the council. What's most important is you come in and communicate what's important to you. Whether you've read all the provisions of the code, come in and say, what I want most importantly is that this happens. Now, if you're someone who does read all that stuff and you, at the public hearing, you say, it says this and I really would like that to change to this, that's great. That's easy for the council to act on.
Right.
But don't feel like you have to reach that high bar. Mm-hmm. What's important is for the council and staff and the planning commission to know what people value, so that can be expressed.
Sure.
So these things are hard, they're complicated, they take lawyers, they take planners who've worked on it for years, and even then it's hard.
Right.
So we want to be open and inclusive.
Sure, absolutely. Someone watching, if they want to get more information, they go to the website?
Go to the website, call the Department of Planning and Zoning, call me, email me, david.levy, L-E-V-Y, at viennava.gov. Be happy to answer and work with anybody.
Okay, excellent. And they should also look at the meeting calendar because we have a plethora of meetings. That we have one. The next one I think is January 30th.
January 30th.
And then in February we have number of meetings on Code Create
We
in
do.
February.
We do.
We've seen residents coming out in the audience, and we want to see more. And so as we get into March, there'll be even more meetings. So they should look at the website for the meeting calendar.
Yep.
They should email you or call you.
Yeah, or Kelly O'Brien, our deputy director, who's also
Right.
managing engagement with us.
Right. What about as is being updated by the council? Will residents be able to see, oh, this change was made, and will they be able to see that, or is that something where they won't necessarily be able to see it because it would be such a heavy lift to put that as public facing?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, it's a good question. We are committed, and the town council really wants it because it's hard for them too. I mean, it's hard for everybody,
Right.
to get red line versions
Right.
of them. So, we provide a draft. They give us all sorts of direction about what changes to make. We bring an updated draft, and we do strike through. Okay, this part has been cut.
Right.
Here's a comment in the sidebar that says why.
Right.
This has been added. Maybe we didn't get direction from council, but staff on second or third or fourth reads or talking with our town attorney says, we really need this provision here so you can read it. So, if you want to get into the weeds, there are lots of weeds.
Sure.
But if there's most people don't want to read all of it.
Right.
So if the public has a question about the thing they're interested in, Kelly or I would be happy to help them find where it is and navigate where it started, what changes have been made, and where it is now.
Sure. And intuitively, it seems as though, we load everything up in Granicus, whether it's a conference session or a council meeting. So intuitively, it seems as though if someone wanted to follow the path along the way, they could look at the prior meeting or meetings.
Yes.
And they could say, oh, okay, I see where there's a red line version, it's uploaded here in Granicus. I can see where changes were made. And then as it goes along, they can look at the prior and probably follow kind of where.
You can. I would say it's probably easier to do it on the Code Create website because maybe we talked about this topic here, and maybe the last time was 7 weeks ago, and maybe the time before that was 7 months ago. So we are doing our best. I'm not sure we're perfect right now, but we're doing our best at getting the various versions onto the website so people can track
So
it
the
there.
Code Create website's better to go to than Granicus in real time.
Yeah, I mean they're welcome to do it and look for it there, but
Sure.
I think you're probably better off. And then if it's not there, kick us an email right through the Code Create website, which has the email address codecreate@viennava.gov.
Okay.
And it'll come right to me and Kelly, and and we'll see what it is, and we'll help people navigate it.
Okay. Excellent.
There's a lot of content,
There-
so we
yeah.
want to help people navigate it.
That sounds great. Well, thanks for educating me, educating the audience here with regard to Code Create. It's a very important project, probably the most important project this year. I would imagine. I mean, we're doing a lot of important things, but this is probably one of the most dramatic. So I think that it's very important for all the residents. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to enlighten us and educate us here tonight. So at this point, before we end our evening, I know we do have some residents here. Are there any questions that you all have? And we'll do our best to answer your questions. If we don't have the answer tonight, we'll certainly follow up and get you an answer very quickly within the next couple of days or so. So are there any questions that anyone? Sure.
Good to see you. I wanted to, I have a couple of questions. The first was to follow up with, you were asking if the residents would be able to see the red line version, if you will, and I know I can go to Granicus and see this week, that week. I just want to know at the end, like when you think you're all done, will there be a red line version of this was the old code, this is everything that's changed? And then also, just as tag on, how do you make sure you didn't miss something in carrying over from old to new? Like if there's a piece of code that really needs to get in, but got dropped somehow inadvertently.
Those are two really good questions. We're going to do our very best to help people map from the old code to the new code. Redlining will be hard because it's structured differently. But we know that creates a higher bar for us to help. Okay, this is where it was. This is where you can find what was in the new place, and then here's what's new. So we've got a burden to do that, which hopefully will be done right at adoption moment. So it's a good question, and it's a good challenge for us, for you to raise it. On the other one, it was, question 2 was?
Dropping, like inadvertently
Yes.
forgetting to carry something over
Yeah.
that really needs to be brought
Right.
over.
So we're really trying as staff. We're also relying on the many sets of eyes that are also looking at it. Our town attorney is reviewing. We have 7 people on the council, some of whom are extremely thorough people. And we have planning commissioners, some of whom are extremely thorough people. So we'll do our best. We rely on others to pick up stuff. And when stuff does it's happened a couple of times already, or a draft does it, and internally we say, hey, we left this out. Let's get that back in there. So that's the best answer I can give. We just do our best.
Okay. Second question is, say I'm a developer or somebody who wants to redevelop some property in town, and I have maybe a 5-year plan, and I come and I get approval before the new code is implemented, but my development's going to occur even after. Like I might start a phase before, but then another follow-on phase may start after. What code do they follow?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. Typically, under almost all state laws, including Virginia, your approval is at the moment of your approval, and your rights are vested when the approval happens. Now, there are different kinds of approvals that exist. There are approvals that are straight up through the zoning code. There are other ones that are conditional use permit approvals that may have their own, so zoning will guide it, but the conditions from a conditional use permit will be the conditions, independent of how the zoning updates. So that means everybody has certainty about what those conditions are. But whatever the approval is, will have its vested right for as long as the code and the decision says it has its vested right. So there's a conversation that happened last night about how long approvals should remain approved. And it's an excellent question. And what level of approval should there be? There are many approvals in Vienna that have no expiration date under the current code. And so that conversation just began last night related to certain kinds of projects. For conditional use permits, you don't necessarily have to rely on the zoning code because there's no absolute right to get that conditional use permit. So the Board of Zoning Appeals can apply an expiration date as long as it's consistent with state law. For other ones, that would be more at the discretion of the town to put it into the zoning code. Complicated answer. But the short answer is, for the most part, anything approved under whatever zoning code they applied, that will be their vested right up until whenever the expiration date is.
Okay. And then final question. You'd mentioned at the onset that we haven't updated our code for 60 years. How do we make sure that it is a continual process versus let's wait 60 years and do it again?
Yeah. And it's not quite true that it hasn't been updated in 60 years. There have been pieces updated along the way. But what hasn't happened is a comprehensive look at again. So what I think best practice is that, and the town manager asked me about this, as things come up, they can be addressed, and that frankly has happened in Vienna. There's another best practice which I don't think has been followed in many places, not just Vienna, which is the comprehensive plan is reviewed every 5 years, right? and the council determines whether and the planning commission, whether they want to update it. Every time the comprehensive plan is updated, the best practice is to look at the zoning code and see whether the zoning code still matches, still is implementing the vision of the town. Has the vision of the town been updated, and therefore the implementing tool, which is the zoning ordinance, does that need to be updated? And that's a good moment to have a check on your overall zoning ordinance. Does this still match what we want?
So it should be every 5 years, really, with the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
Comprehensive plan will look at every 5 years. You may make changes or not.
Right.
And then simultaneously looking at the code as well. May make changes or not, but it's a good time to look at it.
Yeah. I would say when you're done with the comprehensive plan, I would personally.
It would lag. It'll be a lag.
Yeah, it would be a lag. You've done the comprehensive plan. It reflects an updated vision. And you don't have to look at the whole thing. You say, okay, we know we made a change in this area in the comp plan. Now let's take a look at how this reflects it. So Vienna doesn't usually make revolutionary changes to its comp plan. So even if you do that each time, maybe every second or third time, you say, okay, let's take a big picture look at the zoning ordinance. Have we evolved bit by bit in such a way that we really ought to look at the big picture? But I think the comp plan is the trigger for the look at the zoning ordinance. Should be, best practice.
But we're also looking at our comprehensive plan, right?
We got started, although the Planning Commission put it on pause because theoretically this zoning ordinance is implementing the last comp plan, which was adopted in 2016. And they said, okay, let's just do this, and then we'll roll into the comp plan when the zoning ordinance is done. It's never ending. This is the kind of thing. So then you update your comp plan, and then you take another look. Wait, do we need to do zoning ordinance to reflect that update? And then maybe your 5 years is up again, so you got to take a look again. So,
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And her questions actually prompts another set of questions for me.
Sure.
That was okay. So one thought I have is that you have residents, 16,000 or so.
yeah.
You have people who are business owners / commercial business owners of property in town, and they live in town. So they may be in this. If you have residents here, 16,000. Some of those may actually own businesses in the commercial zone.
Right.
You have a third group who own businesses in the commercial zone, but they live over there. They don't live in Vienna.
Right.
Talk a little bit about how much weight, I guess you could say, and it might be an abstract question, but how much weight do we as staff give and the council as staff give to business owners who may say, they may raise their hand or they may come to a meeting and say, well, this would not be good for the business community X, Y, Z. They don't live in town. Mm-hmm. They live over there, but they own a business. Or even a fourth group, maybe there's a group looking to do something in town, and they're saying, well, if you do X, Y, or Z, it's going to impact us in a certain way. So how much is, I'm going to intuitively guess that most of the weight would be given to the 16,000 who live here. But how does that, because I don't even know that we've even had any developers or business owners who own property even really weigh in. Most of the weighing in has been only primarily residents. But I don't know.
Yeah. So my view, personally, and I hope this matches with the town of Vienna, is that folks who have a stake in some measure, if they've got input to provide, we need to listen.
We need to hear
it,
okay.
And we need to bring it forward for the decision makers, because the residential life of Vienna is important. The economy is important to Vienna. I'll add other groups, people who work here, who don't necessarily own. They've got things to say about how the town works, how it functions. So take parking at commercial areas, for example. People have all sorts of points of view on that. There's the owner's point of view, there's the resident's point of view, there's the employee's point of view. How should we regulate parking? And they've all got a thing to say
So they're all valuable. All are valuable.
That's my view of it, and I think our job as staff is to assess, analyze, bring forward to the ultimate decision makers what we've heard.
Right.
Tell us what our point of view on this is, but say, if you look at it this way, that'd be okay too.
Right. Right.
But I don't typically get into choosing who has more weight than others. I try to. That said, 70% of Vienna, or 80%, is the residential
Absolutely.
community,
Right.
and the comprehensive plan is entirely clear that that's an important goal. It's also clear that we want to have a strong economy.
Right. 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 So there's got to be a balance.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Any more? Yes.
I want to thank you both for putting in so many hours and hours of work. Liz DeFrancisco on Knoll Street, you guys have seen me a lot. I love the comment that was made either last night and echoed, it was made last night and echoed again this evening. Residents should come first when there's discussions between residential and commercial, residential and conditional use. I love that you guys are saying that, because taxpayers are who make the town. And I appreciate all that you're doing for that. I do want to remind you that a lot of folks here in town have chickens. And I'll send each of you a fun slide I saw today. The government back in the 60s, I believe, said every house should have chickens, and it should be 2 chickens per head in each household. So numbers have gone up. Egg prices have gone up tremendously, and I think it would be fantastic to encourage chickens and bees.
Goats.
No goats. Chickens and bees here in town as
Right.
a sustainable food source.
Yeah. That's a good. Yeah. That's a good.
Are there any provisions of the zoning code that you think would help it more or less? So I know you have chickens, I've seen them. Do you think that the code is supporting you in being able to do that now?
Depends which version of the code you're looking at. Before Code Create, there was no code pertaining to chickens. The last time I looked, it said that each house could have 4 chickens, maybe 6 chickens, I'm not sure. But in a typical family, if you have 2 eggs for breakfast and there's 2 of you, and knowing that chickens lay at most 1 egg a day and they're cyclical, a family of 2 or 3 needs at least 10 in order to meet their daily requirements.
Okay, so I would absolutely welcome your recommendation, for what goes in. Ultimately, it's going to be the council deciding, but this is information for me as well, so thank you.
Having had roosters, I know that there's no real place for them here in town. There are accidental rooster births that happen, and luckily there's places for those boys to go when they start getting noisy. But I'd be happy to continue working with you on behalf of all the chicken owners here in town.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
Okay.
It's been helpful.
Oh, absolutely. And to everyone out there, thank you for tuning in to On Deck with Mercury. We will see you next time. I hope everyone has a wonderful and enjoyable start to your 2023 year here. Take care.